and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The US President Donald Trump has announced that Saudi Arabia will be designated as a major non-NATO ally as he hosted Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House. Saudi Arabia will join 20 other nations that currently hold major non-NATO ally status, including regional players such as Israel, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Egypt, Tunisia and Jordan. This follows soon after the US signed a sweeping set of agreements with Saudi Arabia covering civil nuclear cooperation, artificial intelligence, and more importantly, the strategic defense agreement, including the long-anticipated sale of the F-35 fighter jets. It must be noted that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have also signed a mutual defense agreement in the past few months. What does a Pakistan-Saudi-US nexus is going to translate for India? That's the big question that we are asking on our debate today. On the telecast with me is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. Thank you very much for being with us. And Ambassador Sachdev, with regards to these parallel developments or seemingly parallel developments that are taking place, the latest one being that the Strategic Defense Pact has been signed between Saudi Arabia and United States of America. Talking about a few months ago, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan signed that defense pact. There has been this immense support and endorsement that Pakistan has witnessed from US President Donald Trump. How is all of these geopolitical upheavals going to impact India?
It's a good question. I think with the unfolding defense scenario in the Southwest Asia, the question needs being asked with increased poignancy. And I think we in India need to be cautious in our estimation of which way is this going to impact on us. In general, I think it's a zero-sum game. If Pakistan gets closer to Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia gets closer to United States with F-35 and so on being supplied with the record $142 billion defense deal in the offing since February visit by President Trump, I think it's a given that Pakistan would like to have access to much of this hardware, and that may upset the delicate balance of power in South Asia. So we need to watch it carefully.
Okay. Professor Madhav Nalapat is also on the show with us. Professor Nalapat, what next? Keeping in mind, US President wants to keep Mohammed bin Salman close. He wants Saudi Arabia to sign the Abraham Accords. But there are conditions that have been put forth by Saudi Arabia. It is only going to normalize ties with Israel only if those conditions, especially peace in Gaza and a two-state solution, is brought about. Do you think this is something that is going to be in the anvil in the coming months?
Look, I would be very, very surprised if the Israelis would appreciate a two-state solution. Certainly, it would be a good idea to have Saudi Arabia in the Abraham Accords, because then it would actually recognize Israel. But the price tag for that is peace in Gaza. Now, peace in Gaza can only come when the military wing of Hamas has been totally disbanded. And I think the Israelis are working very hard to see that that is done. And if that is done, and there is peace in Gaza, and the Abraham Accords are signed by Saudi Arabia, especially under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is a very transformational leader. He's the first a member of the Al Saud family to break away from the family's traditional allegiance to Wahhabism. It is a very welcome break. Making it a major non-NATO ally is a plus for the United States, because the Saudis were getting uncomfortably closer and closer to China. And from that point of view, the US has moved in very quickly and brought the Saudis into their security net. About the Abraham Accords again, I don't know what the situation is regarding Gaza. I do know that the ruling parties in Israel do not welcome a two-state solution, but eventually they will have to accept it because that's the only acceptable way out of the present impasse regarding Israel's relations with so much of the Arab world. So I think, quite honestly, Saudis know how to handle President Trump. It's by taking care of his family interests, including his son-in-law, relatives, friends, and giving them very good contracts. He has in fact outbid the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has outbid Qatar in this, quite frankly. Should there be peace in Gaza? Well, I would definitely welcome it. And then if the Abraham Accords is signed by Saudi Arabia, well, then that would be a normalization with Israel. My own personal view is that this has been signed, keeping Iran in one's gun side. Both the Saudis and the United States know that, so for the Saudis, Iran is a regional competitor, and especially its brand of Islam, Shia Islam, is very different from the Sunni Islam of Saudi Arabia. So, again, I would like to say I have a feeling some of this is to do with Iran, and there must have been a lot discussed behind the scenes. We're not privy to, but I think it does involve, as far as India is concerned, frankly, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan make very bad partners because the Saudis are anti-Wahhabi since Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman took over, and the Pakistan army is completely wedded to Wahhabism. So I'm a bit, in my opinion, India should work its diplomacy very hard, diplomacy in the White House. And the good news is, I think President Trump has been brought under control by the MAGA group on the Epstein files. He has basically said, all right, you release the files. And from that point of view, I think now there is a light at the end of the tunnel for India-US ties. And
Okay.
also for Saudi ties. I think the Prime Minister got the highest civilian honor in Saudi Arabia. So I think those ties need to be reinforced. And I think the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister will be working very hard in that direction, Megha.
Raymond Vickery is also on the show with me. Raymond, in the entire scheme of things where we see these developments taking place, whether it is, the relationship that is growing leaps and bounds between Saudi Arabia and India, and then we see, and would you see this as an anomaly that that Saudi Arabia decides to sign a defense pact with Pakistan, much to the chagrin of India, and now at the same time a close association between US President Donald Trump and his Saudi Arabian counterpart Mohammed bin Salman. How does this all work vis-a-vis India's relationship with Saudi Arabia as well as America? Does India need to be concerned about this?
Well, thanks very much for having me. Peace, like war, has to be waged, and that means you have to have a strategy, you have to have partners, and you have to have some underlying values that guide the principles of how you conduct international relations. Unfortunately, I don't think that the Trump administration has that approach at all. They are very much transactional. The president is transactional. And I think to try to put this into any grand perspective or strategy is a mistake. What's going on here is another transaction, just as President Trump has conducted his real estate business. Rather than building relationships, it's who wins in a particular transaction. And in regard to Saudi Arabia, getting them to buy more defense equipment and having a laudatory relationship sort of a kingship to kingship, is the transaction at hand. I think that this does not bode well for great democracies like India, like the United States has been in Western Europe, because there is not a relationship which should be among the strongest in the world between the U.S. and India, but simply looking at the one-off transaction. I do think that the line between personal and national interest has been crossed here. Salman has been, the prince has been brought in and given the very highest honors. The matter of Jamal Khashoggi and his murder has been swept under the rug. There's been $2 billion put in by the Saudis to the son-in-law of the president, with a fee, a management fee, which nets some $125 million a year. This is not the way in which modern international relations should be conducted. In fact, it's a throwback to the era of kings. So for India and the United States, looking at how you're going to build peace is really contrary to what is happening here. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and nuclear-armed Pakistan is very troubling. What is the strategy there? There doesn't seem to be any, except, again, a transaction. So I would hope that great democracies like India will adhere to values which have been fundamental to the operation of the nation over the past 80 years. And I would hope that India would encourage those forces throughout the world, whether they be in the United States, Western Europe, or elsewhere, to adhere to democratic values which have built peace and prosperity since World War II.
General Sudhakarji is also on the telecast with me. General Sudhakarji, with regards to the closeness that India and Saudi Arabia have seen in the recent years, and that has obviously been fortified by the IMEC initiative, which unfortunately has slowed down because of the Hamas-Israel war that had been waging on for 2 years and more. But do you think there is a need for involvement of United States of America to push things further?
Yeah. Good evening, Megha. Thank you for inviting me for your show. Compliments to very distinguished and esteemed co-panelists. They deserve to have the last say on the subject. But let me respond to your question by saying that tactics without strategy is noise before defeat. And I would compliment Mr. Raymond and Professor Nalapat for having articulated their heart out and conveying in those many terms that there is a total deficit of strategy in what is happening. And when I say this, what I mean to highlight is that when you mix business with the trust or the values, strategic relationship, the value system of strategic relationship, which is supposed to be immersed in the factor of trust. And there is a clash between the two. Business means money and strategic relationship means trust. When there is a conflict between the two, it doesn't take any kind of deal or approach to a congruent kind of a high platform or milestone. So therefore, it brings me to the core issue that the geopolitics in Middle East is lacking coherence, consistency, and also it lacks any kind of a futuristic plan towards peace and normalcy. It is fraught with conflicting points of 1996-97, the clean break. Clean break is a top secret document which has not come out in the open media, which doesn't cater for any space for two-nation theory. One, Netanyahu happened to be a member, and it was a bipartisan decision taken by United States. That's why when Donald Trump came back to power in 2.0, he often was heard talking about Palestinians going to Indonesia, to Egypt, to Jordan, and name any country. So what is the issue? Issue is your moot point is, will US drive IMEC? Obviously, without US, no country in the world can fructify IMEC. India alone cannot actually make it realize on the ground. We need to have the strategic partners coming along and driving the project to its fruition and to its realization. But that is not going to give us the end state. The end state is actually what Donald Trump, if I have understood as a student of geopolitics, he's looking at Abraham Accord, and he's looking at multi-billion or trillions of dollars coming back to US by making Saudi Arabia buy the defense equipment. And also he's got a secondary aim. Unfortunately, this president of United States, the superpower, doesn't understand the dynamics of geopolitics. There is a factor of a triangle of non-state actors: Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan in the world. The factor of non-state actors, unless they are taken control of, the USA mainland or the hinterland or the homeland can be held to ransom. Like 9/11 took place in 2001, similar kind of incident can also take place. It can spring into some kind of a surprise by not keeping them under domination. So this is one. Second part is, today, if at all, US has to restore its status quo ante in geopolitics and come back to its gainful status of a superpower, it has to meaningfully contain, counter, and contest Russia and China. Russia has made deep inroads into Iran, into Afghanistan, into Pakistan. This is only a symbolic gesture to give a pushback to China and Russia and put them at their place by America getting back to its erstwhile position, which was existing prior to its hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan in August 2021.
Okay. Ambassador Sachdev, again, your perception of, can there be, and it looks like it is in this multipolar world that we live in, there of course are relationships between countries that may have conflicting interests. For example, again I point to the fact that much to the annoyance of India, United States under Donald Trump has eulogized, appreciated, applauded and championed the cause of Pakistan, and celebrated Asim Munir as some sort of a hero. But at the same time, India and US are aiming to strike a balance in a bid to sign that elusive trade deal. And at the same time, there are events that are happening in the Middle East, and particularly the closeness that has been reflected, that has been demonstrated by Saudi Arabia when signing that defense deal. Can these relationships exist in isolation, or should more be read into it?
That's what President Trump is trying to do, keep all these vectors mutually isolated and the contradictions among themselves not to be brought to head. On one hand, he would like to have India-Pakistan relations to be put on a different footing. On other hand, India-China relations would have to be put in balance. Then you have Israel and Saudi Arabia. Contradictions have to be talked out. And you have many other vectors in the air. Not to forget about Iran, for example. All that many balls in the air is going to keep President Trump busy during the next 3 years of his term. And I don't see him being able to extricate himself from the Middle East or have the elusive peace in Southwest Asia gain out of his multiple efforts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Coming back to you, Professor Madhav Nalapat, about I think the most important and concerning issue for India is that we signed that trade deal, and it is mutually beneficial for India and United States of America. In fact, so important it is for that deal to be cracked between both countries that the US President was forced to cut down the tariffs on some of these products that were being exported from India to United States, including spices and some dry fruits and other things, because the prices have risen and people are complaining. They are feeling the pinch in America. America being the superpower, its tariff war has worked in its favor. Most definitely, it has been able to bring countries to succumb themselves to the diktats of US President Donald Trump. And I think this is something that will have to be acceptable, that countries will have to accept, whether US President Donald Trump decides to forge greater ties with Pakistan or is having at this point of time a liaison with Saudi Arabia, even while he discounts the fact that Khashoggi was killed under the orders of Mohammed bin Salman. I think that had been the stance that had been taken by Donald Trump in his first term as well, when this assassination happened in 2018, and this stance is not going to change. It hasn't changed in 2025 as well. The point being, India needs to be smart and tactical in extracting its pound of flesh without being concerned about other engagements and activities that are taking place that may annoy us, that may not be to our benefit.
Yeah, Megha, I think you put the point across very well. And may I point out a very important fact, and that is that our diplomacy with Russia, the External Affairs Minister has been visiting Moscow to prepare for President Putin's visit to India. And frankly, this is in the teeth of opposition from not just the Europeans, but the United States. But the reality situation is India is a great power, like it or not, together with Russia, China, and the United States. And you cannot dictate to a great power what it should or should not do. It will work only in its own interest, as Prime Minister Modi made it very clear on several occasions. So I just want to point out that as far as Pakistan is concerned, it's got extremely very limited value for the United States. Trump is thinking about all the rare earth deposits that are in Pakistan. Probably he wants Saudi money to basically, mine those deposits. What he forgets is that much of it is in Balochistan, which is in a complete state of unrest, and Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, all these three provinces are in a state of great unrest. And you can know, I don't think the Saudis are going to be foolish enough to invest money in Pakistan, knowing the frailty of the Pakistan military's grip over much of the country. So I'd only like to say, Megha, I think we should stick to the course of Indian national interest as we have, and I honestly believe that's the course that is being followed now. And an example is our relationship with Russia, and I think that also is a good thing, because Russia should not be thrown completely to the mercies of China. Having India as a good friend and partner is be annoying to the Chinese, but it's very necessary geopolitically. Initially, President Trump appreciated that, and he tried to make overtures to Russia, but somehow, maybe some transaction, God knows, as has been pointed out by the U.S. State Department, the former official. And I'd like to say that this is a very difficult situation to navigate, but we have no option but to navigate. And as I said, in my view, in my calculation, the saving grace, I don't think President Trump is going to be too long in effective command. Already now, he has been forced to submit to the demand or to release the Epstein files. Heaven knows what's in them. And I think that's the first major break of MAGA with President Trump. MAGA was the creation of President Trump in 2016,
Yeah.
and now it's broken with President Trump in 2025. So I think, frankly, there is scope for Indian diplomacy, but in the short run, it looks very, very stormy. But I think India has this fun. I'll give you an example also. India is a country that can be an ideal platform for US platforms, for technology platforms. And for that reason, I think we should develop our own internal policy matrix in such a way that investment both domestically and internationally is made to feel not only welcome but actively courted. So from that point of view, again, the government has been at work. We are seeing some changes, and I look forward to seeing much more. Thank you, Megha.
Okay, quickly getting a response from Raymond Vickery. Raymond, what does the future hold for US-India relations at this juncture?
Well, I'm afraid that we have entered a transactional era between the United States and India. You know, for the past 30 years, many of us have worked to build the strongest possible relationship between the U.S. and India. And this has been based really upon a theory of strategic altruism, and that is that it is in the interest of the United States for India to succeed and be a great power because it is a democracy and has values which are shared by the United States and India. Unfortunately, that era gets passed when President Trump willy-nilly imposes sanctions, very high tariffs, $100,000 charge for H-1B visas, starts to claim credit for solving problems which he didn't solve with Pakistan. And so we are in a transactional era. That does not mean that we should not continue to work for a close relationship based upon democratic values and the interest of both countries. But what it does mean is that until President Trump passes from the scene, and I very much agree with my friend Professor Nalapat that these days are limited, both with midterms and then what comes up next in elections in the United States. But in the meantime, we have to take it a step by step to keep the relationship and go forward upon the great democratic values which have bound the countries and put us on an upward plane in relations for the last 30 years. But that's not the era which we're in now, and we'll just have to work through this. We've worked through difficulties in the past, and we can do it again, but it's not going to be easy.
General Sudhakarji, I do want you to reflect upon the very complex, complicated situation and also detrimental to India's interest in many ways that is happening in our neighboring country, Bangladesh. And there has been speculation rife, rumors floating that there may be United States influence in influencing the elections that are to take place in February 2026. In a situation such as this, that we have, not the best of relations, we are not a strong ally of America and America isn't ours. And while there are different interests that America pursues in the subcontinent, Pakistan and Bangladesh are the two big examples that I mentioned. How can India take care of its interests especially in safeguarding its borders?
Megha, must compliment you for asking a very complex question in a very simple manner. Anyway, let me try and attempt responding to it. First and foremost thing, we need to understand that it is not only USA. Let me put it across very candidly that there is a CIA hand in what is going on in Bangladesh today. There is a deep state involvement without which Bangladesh cannot move away from accomplished and epitomized democratic norms of governance in the Committee of Islamic Nations. This is a country in a very short time grew from least developed countries to a developing country, and the GDP was far greater than that of Pakistan. So having said this, let me just bring out a couple of issues. So we'll go wrong if we do not identify the problem correctly. The diagnosis will conflict between disease and the symptom. The diagnosis is that it is not USA alone. There are three different spheres of influence which are intersecting or in conflict with each other. One is the strategic rivalry between USA and China. Suffice to say that better late than never, USA did realize that no superpower would like to lose its supremacy and authority and has come back to restore status quo ante. What I mean is that China had made such deep inroads into a country like Bangladesh in just about 10 to 15 years, pumped in lots of money and gone into the systemic penetration of all the ecosystem of Bangladesh, whether it is finance or military or diplomacy or name anything. So America has come back. It is trying to push back the China away from Bangladesh. How far will it succeed? One can't say. Let's trust the time. Number two.
Okay.
There is also a sphere of influence, Megha, just one more line if you allow me, it's very important, that the sphere of Islamic fundamentalism, the radicalized Islamic sphere has come into Bangladesh in a big way. The epicenter of terrorism, which earlier used to exist in Afghan-Pakistan corridor, has shifted its base to Bangladesh, unfortunately. You name Hamas, you name Hezbollah, ISIS, Khorasan, you have Haqqanis there, you have Hizbul Mujahideen, you have HUTR, you have ISIS there. Pakistan has come back to rule the roost. So therefore, under the present circumstances, India must identify the critical red lines which is going to go against the national interest. Be mindful of the fact that Siliguri corridor is just 22 kilometers wide.
Yeah.
And anything can happen there. On one side, you have Chinese towards Dakam, towards Nepal. The other side, you have Jampari Ridge. And little away, you have Gelefu, Mindfulness City, between Bhutan and India. And towards Bangladesh, you have Lal Munir Hat airstrip. And therefore, India would do well to remain ready to take not a punishing, but a long-term prospective plan has to be planned, and to enhance or expand the elbow room in the corridor of Siliguri or Chicken Snake, so that the 22-kilometer doesn't remain as a security challenge or an imperative. Rather, it becomes a maneuvering space for India in times ahead. Back to you, please.
All right, on that note, I'm completely out of time. I thank all of you for joining me, sharing your views, and I'll take a short break. Thanks for watching.